Right then bitches, I know you filthy eels have been oh so patient waiting for another video, so do not despair, your puppy is here. This is going to be a good one because not only is it one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you dusty youths, but it's also going to be the final video in this DeHancer giveaway series. So why are we fast tracking it and why is it the final one? Because I'm already scheming on the next move, and that's going to be a special move, a finishing move. So I guess we should jump straight into this look that I created for the music video on your screens. So flip that puss landscape so you can see it in full view, and let's get cooking then, shall we? So just before I get cracking with this color grading breakdown, I want to give a massive shout out to my boy VSD Films, also known as Viran, who provided this splendella piece of footage. So yeah, you should go check out his work on Instagram and check out all of the cool stuff that he cooks, and this is a music video that I graded for him, and this is going to be the look that I'm breaking down today. So what's today's vid going to be all about then, eh? Don't you worry, I'm going to get to that. But first, I want to show you a couple of references that ultimately inspired the look, DNA, tone, vibe of this music video. And what we have here is the quintessential British look that is Top Boy. Specifically season 1 of Top Boy. I don't think it's Summer House, I think it's the season that came after Summer House once Netflix had acquired the rights to Top Boy. So when Drizzy Drake got involved, we're starting from that piece. But as you can tell, this look is super stylized. So we're going to break it down first, and we're going to figure out what's going on with our references and what I actually took from it when applying our own grade to the music video. So I've pulled up some scopes. I've pulled up the Parade and I've pulled up the Vector scope. You can tell that this image leans heavily towards that green, gritty, grungy type of look. Like there's a lot of balance happening underneath that stylized element, but the overall tone and vibe is leaning heavy towards that gritty urban greenish look. And you can tell just by looking at the screen. So if I just hover over onto the gravel and y'all take a look at the qualifier display focus on the actual Scopey, you can tell there's a massive green bias. It feels a little bit like a bluey green, but it's also complemented by the fact that they've protected the skin tones, and these skin tones are very, very dense. Just by looking at the skin tones, you can see how dense they are. They live quite low down in the scopes. The gamma value within the skin isn't really balanced within like the center part of the scope, so around about the 512 mark, they're quite low, and that also helps to create density. But another aspect of today's tutorial slash look breakdown also helps to impact those skin tones in a way that creates this type of density. Next reference, we got Big Boy Drace, and this one is a way punchier look. You can tell with that green tint coming across in this embroidery on the hat, whether it's embroidered or printed, doesn't really matter. You can even tell in like the highlights, these specular highlights that fall on his cheek and his nose, but they're doing a really good job to still protect his skin tone here, and that's helping to tie this look together. Like if there was a massive cast over this entire shot, right, like there was no clean black points, his skin tones were super green as well, it's not going to be a believable look. You're not really going to be able to accept this as reality, but they do such a good job in creating that like green bias while still offsetting it with more neutral elements that you buy into this look. So what are we going to chat shit about today then, eh? The first shot that I want to draw your attention to is this. So when we're analyzing this look in comparison to the Top Boy references, the first thing you're going to notice is there is that green bias creeping through, but our version leans slightly cooler. You can tell by the tint that's coming through on the windows, especially the fencing in the back. It's not as warm, but we're still protecting certain hues and shades, especially the garage doors. The white hues on the garage doors still feel gritty and dirty, but they're protected. And even with the shadows, there's areas where like there's no detail available, like the shadows behind the wheel, but then when you take a look at the shadows on the floor, you can still feel that matted filmic tonality coming through, even on the tires and the side of the car, the cleaner blacks on this drain pipe. So it still feels very British in its construction, but it's got a lot of the influence from that Top Boy reference. So that's point number one. Here's another shot that I really enjoy from the music video. we're starting to introduce other elements from our references, such as protecting the skin tones, adding a little bit more density to it, especially in this leather jacket. Look at how rich this leather jacket feels, but it doesn't feel super overpowering, where it's the only focus of this shot. Look at the highlights that we're starting to get on these leather seats and the steering wheel, the tint that we've got in the windscreen. We're still finding ways to tie it together without losing our focus, which is the artist. So what is the focus of today's tutorial, I can hear you asking? Well, a good buddy of mine gave me some advice a while back, and this is what I wanted to pass on to you guys today. And I've mentioned this in other videos as well, but the majority of these film looks that you guys are going to go off and create, the heavy lifting that you lot have to do in the background comes from contrast work. So that's going to be our key focus today. We're going to focus on how do we create filmic contrast and what methods do we have available to ourselves. So the very first way that you can go ahead and create contrast is through exposure. Now the requirements on my end for this were to create that darker tonality to this. It had to feel grungy, it had to feel gritty, it had to feel like there was some dodgy underground business going down. So when I exposed this, I had to keep that in mind. So if you take a look at where the core of this image lives, it's quite low in terms of where it sits within the scope. So this middle region, the gamma section, is pulled back, and that is also enhancing that underground tone. Yeah, there are bright spots, right? Like you've got this harsh bright blue cyan on his leather jacket, then you've got the overhead light directly affecting the highlights on his face, but nothing is blown out to a point where it doesn't really fit in with this. And if you wanted to pull this down, you could just window it and pull that back, right? But this is the first way that you're going to start to create your contrast. The second way that you can go ahead and play around with contrast is by creating a custom curve. Now, if you take a look at what's going on here, you might think, well, what's the difference between this and the original level of contrast you had before you even went ahead and balanced it? It's very important because there are still elements in this that are going to be key. So the first thing that I want to show you is, if I add a DCTL onto this and bring up my middle gray exposure chart, right? I believe this was Ari C-Log. Yeah, it was. So it was Ari C-Log. If I just pull back that, you can see where the middle gray of this image lives. So I'm protecting that area by creating a point, making sure I don't alter this point of the middle gray within my custom curve, and then I'm making choices around the middle gray. So I'm lifting up the very bottom, and then I'm creating a couple of points around that just so I can get a softer S curve, bringing down the top end so we can have a nicer highlight roll off, and this is giving me that punch that I need from my contrast. Another thing that you can go ahead and do within your contrast if you want to protect those matted areas is you can take the low soft, and if you start to lift that up, just keep your eye on what's happening on the scopes. I'm gonna have to go quite far within this low soft, but once I do that, I'm telling the software, assume this low soft as my stop point, right? I don't really want you falling below that stop point, so just kind of contain everything above this. The third method you can introduce when trying to be super particular with your contrast is creating a contrast ratio node. So what is contrast ratio? It's about having more precision and control over your contrast. So often what you'll find if you're a beginner is you'll be drawn to this little contrast slider down here, and what you'll do is you'll crank it up until you start to introduce more contrast. But what you're doing is you're also adding tons of saturation into this image, and it's not going to give you as much precision as what it would if you combine the tools at your disposal, i.e. the custom curve, i.e. properly balancing your footage and then introducing the ratio. So what we're doing here is we're building a custom contrast workflow that's going to give us finer separation between shadows, midtones, and highlight regions, which is key for a gritty yet cinematic look that we're going for if we're keeping in line with our references, which were Top Boy. So if I just reset this node, I'm going to show you how that would work. Let's just assume this is our secondary point, right? We've gone in, we've balanced the exposure, then we started to introduce contrast through this custom curve. What we're going to do in our ratio is we're going to start to pull back on some of that contrast via the slider, maybe to a point where we are reintroducing a little bit more detail in those darkest areas. So you can start to see we're bringing back some of this image, but it's also brightening this image. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this pivot and I'm gonna start going backwards, and you can see it's controlling how much light we're letting in. And it's really as simple as that when you're dealing with your contrast ratio. I think most of the tools in DaVinci kind of work under the pretense of you have to constantly balance them to find that consistency. So one final tip when it comes to contrast. Let's go back into our custom curve. Right now you can see that I've created this S curve, but it's affecting more than just this luminance channel. So I'm just gonna hit Ctrl Y just so I have another version available, so all of the changes that I'm making are not really affecting the original grade that I've already created. If you want your custom curve to purely affect the luminance value, what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to unlink these channels down here, and then you will be solely working within this Y channel. So what I'm gonna have to do here is I'm just gonna go ahead and pull that back up and reset all of these points. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna remove the enhancement of saturation within the RGB channels. So if I just go back to the previous version, you can see this version of contrast is affecting not only the luminance value, but also the saturation value. And when you go to the second version that we've just created, you can see that it's only affecting the luminance value of this image when you create a custom curve. So you can be even more particular. So if you then wanted to go back in to your HSV saturation node and crank up the saturation that way, you have the flexibility to do so. And this is why contrast is probably the key area when it comes to developing filmic looks. So I lied, and what I actually have is a fifth and final bonus tip of how we can use contrast to create more color density. And I'm gonna try to show you on a slightly different clip. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is maybe find a different shot where he's looking directly at camera. Maybe something like this is cool. And what you need to go ahead and do is create a new version. I'm gonna disable my color splice node, and then you wanna go ahead and disable any other nodes that could be affecting the density of the skin, just for now, for this effect to be shown in full force. And I'm gonna do this within my parallel nodes. So before you go and grab a key of the skin, I'm just gonna grab this DCTL so I can find my middle gray when it concerns skin. Just gonna do that and go over to my contrast. I can kind of guess where this is gonna land, which is gonna be there. So I'm just gonna remove that. Now, if I go ahead and grab a key of the skin, you might need to open up some of these parameters just to clean up this key. And when you feel pretty confident that you've got a decent key of this skin, we'll just park it somewhere there. We'll go back into this. And remember, what you want to do is you want to unlink these channels before you can start affecting them. So now if I create additional points, say here for example, and I start to pull this down, you want to be very careful with how you do this, because if you go too far, you're going to break it. And if you go too high, you're also going to break it. So you want to just ever so slightly start adjusting that point so that skin tone deepens. And you can see in the cheeks, we're starting to get more density, especially within the shadows. Even on some of these noodle boxes and shadows around that, we're introducing more color density by playing around with the parameters of this skin. And if you take another point just above that middle gray, the effect becomes more vivid. And that is your final bonus tip for how to use contrast in your workflow, specifically with this one creating more color density. Right then guys, that's all I've got for you today. I'm gonna piss off now and not give anyone any more licenses because I just want to keep them for myself. I'm joking. We have 2 more lifetime licenses to give away, and we have 4 iOS licenses still remaining. There was an issue with one of the licenses where the person that did ultimately win the license was unable to reclaim it. So what that means for you guys is that there is an additional iOS license available, and I'm going to be giving that away. Well, you might be thinking, well, what are the rules here, Mike? First and foremost, I don't know who Mike is. And secondly, I'm going to be doing this giveaway over on my Instagram live. So you got until Friday to drop as many comments as you can on this tutorial. Make sure they're in line with what we're doing. I don't want to know about your nan's gumbo or the broth that she made from the bone marrow. I want to know about your color grading, because I've got some exciting things that I'm planning on doing, and it's going to require you guys getting active with your participations. And look guys, just stepping away from the veil of this character on YouTube, right? I just wanted to say thank you, because you guys have got me up to like 2,600 followers, which is wild. I wasn't able to envision that type of progression this quickly, but you guys have made it possible. And this is why I'm doing things like giveaways and trying to team up with companies where I can give back to you guys, because I value you lot so much that I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all of the subs. Thank you for the way that you guys constantly comment on these videos. Even the fact that you guys pop over on Instagram and check in just to see if I'm all right, drop messages on work that I'm releasing. It means the world to me, man. Like, this community is so sick that we're building, and just you wait to see what I've got in store for you lot, because it's gonna be sick. Away from all of the giveaways, the direction I'm gonna take this channel in is gonna be sick, and it's gonna be something that no one else is doing in the color grading community. So if you want to be a part of that movement, remember to stick around, remember to engage, subscribe, comment, flick on that notification bell, because where I'm taking this channel, if you're a part of this community, you're going to be so excited when it's time to finally release that information. So look guys, I hope you're getting some valuable information from this. Go practice your contrast, because your contrast right now is whack. And if you got whack contrast, then you got whack color grades. So now I've given you some more secret sauce. Go practice that immediately. Remember, Friday, I'm going to be doing an Instagram live where I'm going to be randomly selecting winners. So get as many comments on this as possible. And if you've already been commenting, you'll have additional entries when it comes to Friday's the Hansa giveaway on Instagram live. So make sure you've got that notification bell on, because I'm going to be uploading a little post telling you guys what time the giveaway is happening. And just before I bounce guys, you should already know that I do one-to-one sessions. So if you're struggling to learn how to color grade and you need some more personal help, just hit me up on the gram and we can get a session booked in, and I can take you through either basic learning or more advanced learning, just whatever you need in it. Right, that's the video done, you bunch of freaky things. You know how we end this one every time, so say it with me. All right, cool. Shepherd. Peace.